This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Handicapper alongside Seth Miller. I am Anthony Mormino, and first off and foremost, happy Veterans Day, ladies and gentlemen, on a day when we should, on any day really, but certainly a day when we should pause and give thanks for all the men and women who have allowed us to live in this country the way that we want to, bet horses as we please, whether we do it correctly or incorrectly, but the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. Seth, you're old enough. You remember what it used to be called?
Armistice Day?
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
From World War I, it was called Armistice Day when the peace was signed. I guess I'm going to figure it out, 11 o'clock in the morning on November 11th. And one of the things I always truly respect about Veterans Day that we haven't slid it. It falls on Monday this year naturally, but that it's still November 11th. And one of the interesting things, they're not running at Churchill Downs or Aqueduct today. This used to be a day when the General Douglas MacArthur was run at the Big A, a big racing day. This was, I'm going back, now I'm not going back to the 40s, folks, but the early 90s, and then eventually they moved the Douglas MacArthur to opening day at Belmont Park, and then they eventually moved it. But, it used to be a big day, but on a Monday legal holiday, not running at the two big tracks.
Hollywood and Gulfstream, though, are running.
Yep.
They've got unusual holiday cards. And I will second your notion. I got a couple of veterans right in my immediate family. My 90-plus-year-old father, a retired colonel in the Army, served in Europe in World War II. My older brother, a retired colonel from the Air Force, served in various conflicts that this country's had over the past 30 years, but wound up his career in the Pentagon. So I'm certainly proud of both of them, and so I think we should all be proud of all of the folks who have served their country.
It's there's nothing like it. My father, who passed away, was in World War II, and it's just an amazing sacrifice you can make for your country. And nowadays, even more so since it's voluntary that you choose to do something while having a choice. And a day that I say the same thing about Memorial Day, and we try and raise our son on the idea. I said, the idea really isn't about sales or on Memorial Day picnics and things like that, that at least take a little bit of time and thank a vet, as they like to say, or whatever. But happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there, with our deepest and humblest thanks and gratitude from a free country. Big weekend that you got to have Ron Nicoletti on Racing Across America. They had a very nice card on Saturday afternoon. They basically were 50% of horses and courses, as they had 8 stakes races previewing their Sunshine Millions Day. And it's still, now that we're into November, a couple years ago we got used to December racing at Gulfstream Park, or new to it, early December racing, I should say. And now we have summertime racing, etc. We're going to have hockey and Del Mar season coming up. So we're seeing a seismic shift from the norm, Seth, in the world. But Gulfstream Park, you can ask Ron, maybe he knows that, but it looks like do you get a feel doing Equidaily.com that this full-time year-round at Gulfstream Park is here to stay, or are they going to back up the truck next year and just stay the winter dates, or you think they're really looking to make the plant usable 12 months a year?
No, I think Gulfstream seems committed to this schedule now, and I think there is a conflict down there in Florida that we'll have to shake out, because I don't think two tracks in that close of proximity can go head-to-head. And so I think it will shake out. Whether that'll mean Calder is absolutely on the outs or not, I don't know, but Calder has slot machines now, and so that is a driving force behind them wanting to keep racing, because the racing is tied in to the slots as well. So that plays part of this. We'll see how it shakes out, but I don't think two tracks can go head-to-head like that. But Gulfstream, I do think, is committed to the year-round. Frank Stronach has said out in California he's pushed for that. Now he's got what he's wanted out there too, for the most part, with Santa Anita having the long season. I've said before, I'm not sure these long seasons are good for these circuits. But if you're the owner of one of the tracks and the other tracks on the circuit are competitors, I can see where you'd make the push to get as many dates as possible.
And that seems to have always been Frank Stronach's role. He thought is, as a business person, he's just like, well, just let us race and let the market figure out what the people wanted. And I'm just old enough, and Seth, I kind of get a feel for when you started loving the game, that, you know, we had this battle in South Florida, the old Hialeah at Gulfstream Park, the famous middle dates, which apparently financially were so valuable, and how the legislature really stepped in, and then eventually the legislature handing out those dates, some would say led to the demise of Hialeah. I mean, that they used to alternate them. As Gulfstream got a little bit better, they started to alternate them. And then apparently, you know, some would say because of neighborhood considerations and other things, that they stopped alternating them, and then eventually Hialeah stopped.
Yeah, eventually
being Hialeah.
They were on the outside looking in, essentially, and they could not sustain that because they had, you know, a fairly short meet as it was. So if the dates are on the wrong side of the calendar, it's hard to keep going. Hialeah now, of course, there's a little bit of a resurgence with quarter horse racing, and they have slots now too, I believe. They have talked about the potential to bring thoroughbreds back there at some point. It's hard to see how that's going to shake out now, but
You also wonder,
Hialeah has made a comeback.
I've wondered this about Hialeah. What's the condition of the plant? I mean, people told me the plant was in
That's what I've heard
rough
too.
shape 20 years ago.
Yeah, I have never been to Hialeah, but you
neither.
look at the pictures of when it was in its heyday. I guess it was a racing palace with the pink flamingos
The
out
drive
there.
up,
and,
they talk about what Royal Palms or whatever they are, and you got to, I mean, people, you know, now I'm becoming, you know, the old guy at the track, the 50-year-old, but 30 years ago when I was the 20-year-old, and I talked to 50 and 60-year-old men that had been at bed, they all marveled at Hialeah and how much joy it was to go down there. Apparently it was a beautiful drive going in. And if you ever see one of my favorite movies of all time, Let It Ride, which was filmed at Hialeah, there's a scene when the Patriots are coming to the track that day, and it looks so gorgeous, like this gigantic staircase going in. Looks magnificent. But I've wondered what Hialeah, the plant itself, has looked like. So it'll shake itself out. We'll be able to bet horses. But I've said this before: the Calder thing, the Gulfstream thing, the Santa Anita thing. Boy, I tell you what, dirt racing is going to make a big return, because how are you going to run in the turf courses? I mean, they can only take so much. You look at, you know, you talk about Calder, boy. I mean, Calder's turf course, you know, gets just beat up by its long, 7-month meet now, because Gulfstream's up.
Yeah, I was saying that when we
meet.
talked about this the other day pertaining to Southern California, I like the 3-track circuit, which
Yeah.
seemed for years and years to work at the various venues, and that's shaking out to fall by the wayside now in the early part of the 21st century. And so it is going to have to make a difference, because courses don't get a rest. Of course, down at Gulfstream, they do have that wide turf course that they can play with a little bit.
they have.
That's different than the tracks we were talking about out in Southern California.
And that's very different. And it'll be interesting to see how much pounding a turf course can make, even when you have it as expansive as Gulfstream Park. But I new things, even as I've gotten older, they don't bother me so much, because I've always said, you know, it's just, I always say the same thing about Saratoga, and I've said the same thing since 1990. I don't need to express an opinion whether it's too long or it's too short, whatever. Let's just keep finding out, because it's been my opinion only, and I know the numbers might say something different, that all the extensions, for example, at Saratoga, have always worked. The numbers
Except
always.
I don't know whether this year didn't tell us that maybe they're reaching the.
Well, now here, this is my point to that, because I love stats. Nobody loves stats more than me. Here's my argument about all the data we collect now. Realizing this, we have produced approximately 75,000 fewer thoroughbreds in a 3-year window, which I always consider the racing age, I consider 3, 4, and 5-year-olds to be the glut of horses that run for us. And we are been about, what, 22, 23,000 short from the high water mark of the late 80s. So when you take 3 consecutive years, even say 15,000 light, we're missing 45,000 horses in the racing population. I think that's the answer. It's not the dates. It's not anything. It's we're missing 45,000. Like one of the arguments.
But does that reflect at Saratoga? I mean, are the extra people that show up at Saratoga that clued in the field size? I don't know whether that's a Saratoga problem necessarily.
Well,
I
I'll tell
think
you
on
what.
Saratoga would be the giveaways. I think they're scaling back,
Yeah.
and I think that had an effect again this
Yeah.
year. But still, the numbers this
Oh,
year,
I'll tell you
to
what.
me, with the very good weather this year, seems
I'll
to
tell you
maybe
what I
we've
think
hit the-
about. I know Mark Cusano's been around a long time, even longer than myself, has talked about it. Nick Kling's talked all of it. I have to tell you something. I think except for the 0.1% of us, I think when people talk about the quality racing, I think that's a fabrication. It's this very small group of us. I think the average person goes to the racetrack at a Saratoga. I think field size is the only thing that they care about. I don't think an average person on a Saturday at Saratoga can go, oh, I can't believe they're running maiden claimers on the turf.
Yeah, but I think field size and for the people out in the backyard, I think both are fly completely under the radar.
Right.
I think they're just going.
Well,
for
no,
date
I think
Saratoga.
right. I think what happens about field size is they get rewarded at the windows. That makes them feel good. I don't think they dial into the fact that if you had a plethora of 6-horse fields after a while, you're getting $20 exactas, but with 12-horse fields, you're betting numbers and birthdays, and you get a $400 exacta type of thing. Where that's it. Because I think there's a very, 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 very small group that says, I can't believe they're running maiden claimers on the turf on Saturday. Be like, nobody cares. I remember when they didn't run any turf racing on Saturday because they had the boards across the infield. So that's it. But it'll play out nicely. What'll play out nicely today, Parks, Finger Lakes, and we like to give the New York people the second seat, so we'll start in Pennsylvania Way on this Veterans Day.
Parks this afternoon, we are opening with a maiden claimer in race number 1, $20,000 to $25,000 tags. 3, 4, and 5-year-olds going 6 furlongs.
And I talked about this before at Parks. I think they also do it down at the fairgrounds. I'm sure I'll discover more racing jurisdictions that do this as I learn more, and that is the maiden claimers at Parks. They like to put there are no 6-year-olds that can run in this. Field of 7 in the opener, not in my mix, but just looking at number 7, Bank Fraud, who was a first-time starter, who is 6-1 on the outside. Let's pay a little bit of attention to see if they bet this runner right out of the box. But for me, my selections are 4, 2, and 1. Familiarized going out at 6-1, and this horse has a race under the belt, going out for the powerful Michael Trambetta barn. Debuted maiden special weights, now comes in for the tag. That sort of speaks for itself. Is an offspring of Orientate, gets Trevor McCarthy in the saddle. That is a litany of positive stuff. The negative stuff, I guess you would say, was finish off the board, beat nearly 24 lengths in the debut, but was only 6 lengths off the lead at the 8th pole, so that just indicates to me, deceleration set in by fatigue in the career debut. Gets softer competition today. I would think that I could project out that the internal pace will be a little softer, and as a pace trip handicapper guy, pace and you becoming exhausted is unbelievably important to your final finishing position. So I'll take number 4, Familiarize, and I'm not kidding myself. I would sign up for 6-1 right now. I don't think we'll receive it. For second, number 2, Classic Review, going out for the 3rd career start. First time in for a tag. Showed good speed in the career debut in maiden special weights on October 6th before throwing in the towel at 20-1. Came back at 1/3 the price, getting Lasix. Didn't run so well, but now gets Manny Franco in the saddle and running for a tag. And for third, the rail horse, number 1, Adios Harry, making the 2nd career start after debuting maidens at Presque Isle on the Tapeta. Gets Lasix today for the first time. 4, 2, 1.
And Barovo, the number 6 horse, attracts my attention. Corinthian on top says win sooner rather than later, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But a couple of starts back in 2012 didn't show much. Now off the layoff, drops in for a tag today. So that one at 8-1 on the morning line looks interesting. Second race at Parks this afternoon, a bottom level claimer, $5,000 tags. These are 3-year-olds and up, going 1 mile.
And I didn't do this on purpose, and I'm wondering why this horse isn't at Suffolk Downs today, but 6-5-4 for me. On Veterans Day, we have the USS Constitution. This horse has been a very, very solid performer of late. There's already 5 victories and only 14 starts on the Parks racing surface. Going the mile again where this horse won 2 races back for the Open Company 5,000 claimer. Took on starter allowance 5,000 most recently and did finish 3rd going the mile at Parks. We're on number 6, USS Constitution on top of the second half of the early daily double. For second, number 5, Bridled Energy. This horse 2 races back when racing 7 in a dated claimer, scored the victory, and then in the Open claimer, I've talked about how ruggedly different they can be. This horse on an off racetrack did finish 2nd, so we'll move forward with number 5, Bridled Energy. For third, number 4, The Laurels. Trisha Farrow's runner, very, very competitive of late. It has hit the board in 12 out of 18 lifetime. Full, as Moses Malone once said about 30 years ago. The Laurels is a major competitor in here, and even with the offspring of Forestry, this horse has already shown us a very, very strong liking for going 2 turns at Parks, going the mile. And if you want to see a level of consistency, just edit out the 1 mile races at Parks, and I think plus or minus 1, you're at about a 75 buyer speed figure on about 8 tries of late. 6-5-4. Short field in here of only 7, but very competitive at the top.
Conditional claimer in race number 3 this afternoon at Parks, $8,000 to $10,000 tags. Non-winners at 2 lifetime the condition. These are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. Again, 1 mile the trip.
1-4-6. My selections in here as we get the rail on number 1, Interrupt. They're going to take the blinkers off this afternoon after trying them on a turf race that was just a debacle. Now, this would be the case where blinkers on, off. I had talked at Breeders' Cup. I had hoped that She's a Tiger would take the blinkers off. I mean, to me, she had not wear the blinkers, I should say, because she had such good speed. But Interrupt, I don't know that it was the blinkers. The horse was starting from the parking lot on the turf, showed good early speed, and then fatigued. My one thought would have been that if I was going on the turf for Michael Rogers, I've said this before, it's an old school move where trainers would use a turf race to really get some foundation and some, usefulness to come back to the dirt. It's not used as often as it used to be, and I just think this runner who has scored well going a mile at Penn National has tried the Tapeta over at Presque Isle and then tried the turf. Now gets back to the dirt, drawing down inside. Could be held to pay, number 1, Interrupt. For second, number 4, Black Lagoon. A $7,500 claim off of a second-place finish. This horse has hit the board in 6 consecutive efforts, including a victory this past summer at Parks to break the maiden, now in a 2L. For third, number 6, Glowing Rate. I hope I haven't undervalued this 12-to-1 shot, who most recently had a 2L, but for $7,500 finished 2nd. And I've said this before, I like horses who step up, and in this case, you step up for $2,500 off of an L, 1-4-6 in race 3 from Parks.
The 4th race is a calendar condition claimer. The tag, $7,500. The age, fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. The trip, 5.5.
These are for horses who haven't won a race in 6 months. Getting 4-2-1 for me, folks. Number 4 is Miss Ravallo, going out for Peter Casavanis, who owns and trains this runner, who has been very, very good performer, almost indiscriminate to racing track, distance at Parks, has never been off the board in 4 starts, makes only the second start since July 22nd, first since the early part of September. This horse has run well fresh before. We expect to run well fresh this afternoon with Ariel Louis Vaz back in the saddle. He was aboard 2 races back when they won by a comfortable 3+ lengths at Parks, going 6. For a second, the rail horse, number 2, Red Foxy Dorothy, was a $5,000 claim for Kathleen DeMasi 4 races back. 2 races back, scored the victory by nearly a handful. For third, scheduled to break from the number 4 post position, is number 1, Springflower, going out for Scott Lake, 4-2-1 in the 4th.
5th race this afternoon, maiden claimers, $13,000 to $15,000 tags. Fillies and mares, 3, 4, and 5 years old, going 7 furlongs.
At a race that I find quite intriguing here, folks, 4, 5, and 3. And yesterday we got to New York, Seth, and we got some of our sea legs, a couple winners, including a horse in the $20 range. I felt a little bit, like when you're feeling a little under the weather, as I was at Churchill Downs. I got to the Big A and snap out of it. Well, we snapped out of it, we hope. Derage Girl, I think, is at 9-2, I think, right in the crosshairs for me. I love the most recent effort, the 3rd career start. I've talked about it before. Athletes working forward and progressing. Well, I think Derage Girl is in a very, very nice spot. Coming off of the loss at maiden claiming 10, now steps up to 15. Well, that's good because I think we're stepping up in ability also. So with the step up, it probably helps us with the price. I think if we'd come back at the same level, probably would have seen about a 2-1 versus a 4.5-1 on the morning line. Number 4, Derage Girl, my top pick. For a second, right next door in the starting gate, number 5, Red Hot 10, going to the post for the 10th time. Maybe perhaps a little bit of a reach. My thought in here was shortening up to the 1-turn elongated sprint, maybe coming out of some route races and not going 6 could be the tonic. For third, number 3, Dragon Tattoo, 2-1. This horse debuted to a runner-up position July 6th at Parks. 2 races back, was runner-up at Parks. Now, here's the inquisitive thing for me. Those are maiden claiming, 25, 2 races back. I wouldn't be so quick to throw in the towel for $10,000. Dropping down for 15 this afternoon. 4, 5, 3 in the 5th.
All right, we'll take our first break. When we come back, we'll continue our look at Parks. A little later on, Finger Lakes. Stay tuned.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. With a newly designed and engineered internet wagering platform, enhanced video streaming, additional funding options, and 3 new individual wagering opportunities, CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. Combine that with our all-new mobile website. You have 2 of the most powerful, innovative, and advanced wagering platforms available today. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I'm Seth Merrill. Join me weekdays at 10 for Racing Across America. We'll look at important races from around the country, get insight from top handicappers and analysts, and preview the upcoming week in racing. That's Racing Across America, weekdays at 10, right here on the OTB TV network. And welcome back to the Handicapper Report on this Monday morning. Again, hats off to all the vets out there on Veterans Day, as we said at the top of the show. A couple of venues today that aren't normally running, a couple of bigger venues, Hollywood and Gulfstream. We're taking a look, however, at Finger Lakes a little later on, and Parks, and we'll continue there right now with their 6th race. A calendar condition claimer, $7,500 tags. These are 3-year-olds and up, going a mile.
And speaking of venues, it is sort of surprising that running in New York today on Veterans Day, on Monday. And I had seen up on Twitter the pictures. You know, when things change, sometimes you don't get it, but that the other lake and bushes were gone. I went back to some old races at the Big 8. That was a pretty big darn lake that the pond that they filled in. They filled in the big one and took all the bushes out, but at the Big 8. 4-3-1, ladies and gentlemen, and barely nothing. Kind of a cute name, not quite oxymoron. Is my top in here with Victor Molina in the saddle. The third place finish behind a strong winner, Surprise Storm most recently. I think is a case of a horse putting in a good effort, just running up against a better horse. So maybe we're going forward in here. We get the dated claimer once again off of a good effort, albeit a third place effort. We're 8-1 on the morning line. Number 4, barely nothing on top for second. Number 3, Cat's Hope, coming off of a victory at 5-1. That was the second race off of a March 18th layoff. Comes back to 2 turns now after running 2 7-furlong races off the layoff. And for third, number 1, Rayburn's Gold. This horse has been very, very sharp of late, one might say, in nearly career best form as 7 years of age for this offspring of Repent. We draw the rail going the mile, 4-3-1.
Seventh at Parks is a conditional claimer, $8,000 to $10,000 tags, non-winners at 3 lifetime. The condition, these are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds up, mile and a 16th.
And what has struck me funny, you know, doing Monday and Tuesdays, that they sort of closed down turf racing at Parks. I know it's not a big part of their program, but obviously in the Northeast, you know, you got to think that Philadelphia Parks racing and New York would be somewhat similar, but I think this is 3 weeks in a row doing Monday and Tuesday, and now that
I asked Keith, we had Keith Jones on probably 2 weeks ago, and I said, is turf racing done? And he confirmed that it was.
Do they have any, I mean,
I think he said they were doing some work on the turf course.
Okay, I mean, because,
I guess to prep for next season, get things done while there's still a little season left to do
because
that.
you wouldn't think that, right, you would think, I mean, not that it's applicable, but my lawn still looks nice. It's not like, you know, I always say this, sometimes when we've had mild winters, eventually in New York by about December 10th, they have to cancel turf racing. The grass is dead. So they did cancel it for reasons other than weather, which that makes sense. 1-8-4, ladies and gentlemen. Bourbon Kitty gets my top pick coming off of a second place finish, which was a second race off of a February layoff. We're going a mile and a 16th, a little bit farther down inside. And this is an offspring of Discreet Cat. And as I saw Discreet Cat, and before Discreet Cat had the Blue Silks of Godolphin, this was Mr. Robsham's horse. And when he passed away, Mrs. Robsham stayed in the game. It's always something I always look for. But I guess, Seth, she's now getting out of the game. The end has come for the familiar maroon and gold silks in New York for so many years. And Discreet Cat, I know, did most of the running for Godolphin because I think they sold them after the first career start at Saratoga. So,
yeah.
But I always think of Mr. Robsham first and then Mrs. Robsham. She did stay in the game for a couple of years after her husband passed. But Bourbon Kitty down inside gets my top pick, third race off of a wintertime layoff. For a second, number 8, as we turn the pages here, the outside horse, Angel in Waiting. Now, previously, this horse has shown very good early speed, tactical type of speed. I don't know what the most recent effort going 7/8 was about. My guess is that the allowance company just outran this horse, that now back for $10,000 claimers. We're going to see this horse back in the mix early. For a second, number 4, Even Prettier. Scored a victory in the 2L most recently at Penn National. Now makes the Parks debut this afternoon. 1-8-4 in the 7th.
Yeah, Discreet Cat, to me, in my memory, is one of the very first horses that was one of those flash in the pan, let's jump in from the Mideast kind of horses. And subsequently, there were more of those. First start, second start, they looked like a superstar, and they jumped. And Discreet Cat certainly turned out to be.
Yeah, no, he was. I was almost always against him, but I mean, he was sprinting at least. I mean, he's a son of forestry. I mean, he had some moments. His cigar mile. I mean, when he showed up, he was gigantic.
I wonder, though, if when they jump in on one of those horses, I don't think they're jumping in to get a good sprinter. I think they're hoping. I think they're hoping they got a precocious 2-year-old who's going to go on and be.
I think for them, it's actually exactly the opposite. They'd rather win a 2-mile race, you know, the endurance type of horse. I think you're 100% right. But I will say this: you know, they made some purchases. They bought a horse out of Del Mar years ago who had just won the Del Mar Futurity Worldly Appeal or something, I think. I mean, trust me, they're brighter than me. I mean, they have great managers. I've always been suspicious of some of the ones that, like Discreet Cat. I'm like, you understand he's by forestry, right? I'm like, you're okay.
And I think there was a lot of that same buzz at the time where people scratched their heads and thought, how is this going to pan out exactly?
I mean, you might get a great miler. I mean, he might have been one of the best milers.
8th at Parks this afternoon, starter allowance at the $10,000 level, 3-year-olds and up, going 3/4 of a mile.
6.59 for me, selection, about my top picks. Neum Strike, I think, could be a live wire in here. I know he's only 72 on the morning line. Comes out of one of those tough, you're down on the rail, you run a big race, you finish off the board, you're just up against so much on that day. Now you get a much better post position with Angel Arroyo, who we've seen in New York doing very well. He gets the mount this afternoon. For second, right next door on the starting gate, number 3. A Cop and Proud of It, been very popular at the claiming box, been claimed 5 out of the last 12 efforts. This horse has good early speed, comes off of a W on an off racetrack on October 7th, sprinting 5.5. Should be the pace setter in here. And for third, the outside horse, number 9, 6.59 in the 8th.
9th race at Parks this afternoon, conditional claimer, $14,000 to $16,000 tags. Non-winners are 2 lifetime the condition. 3-year-olds and up, 7 furlongs.
7.62 will wrap it up for me. And number 7 is Drax Hall Woods, who, you know, when I saw this, I was intrigued. This horse ran in a 3L most recently when eligible for 2L, which we've entered in here. The 3L was for $25,000. For John Service, who's obviously a very able trainer, this horse impressively won the career debut by a pole. And it's one of those situations coming off of a 2-month freshie. I was like, well, did you just want the race today? Was it practice, etc.? The reason I asked that is because you can usually get a claiming 16,000 2L now rather regularly in the United States. So I'm going to take that as just practice with the blinkers on. There's no information whether they're taking blinkers off this afternoon, so I guess we're going to be a go. This is the jock that rode the horse in the impressive debut. So number 7, Drax Hall Woods, my top pick. For a second, number 7, Jaguar King. First off the claim for Michael Pino, who is at about 33% for these type of moves, coming off of a second place finish, which I'm sure when he had dropped the name in the claiming box, he was happy to see, to lose by half a length, giving him a chance to come back at this level, second time blinkers. For third, on the outside, number 10, Truny, scored a victory 3 races back, going 2 turns at Parks, and then most recently finished second, going a mile over at the Meadowlands. Now this offspring of Bernardini goes 7/8, 6/10 in the finale.
All right, that'll bring us to our next break. When we come back, Finger Lakes. Stay tuned. The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right, the 2013 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes and a seat at the 2014 National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month, the Capital Cup on December 7th. So sign up today online at capitalotb.com or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook. And don't forget our Showviver series, Capital OTB's online handicapping contest. Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Listen to what people are saying about the Clubhouse Racebook.
I've been coming here for well over 30 years to the OTB, and I think this is an outstanding facility. Probably comparable to something you'd see in Vegas. They have the big screens there, and then they have their auxiliary screens for, watching all the tracks. And the primary tracks of the day, they'll switch to the big screens, which is ideal for most of us race guys. We like to see the big races on the big screen. Well done.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Handicapper Report alongside Seth Merrill. I am Anthony Mormino. We've got Parks in the books. Turning our attention to Finger Lakes on this Veterans Day. In the opener, we have 3-year-olds and up, claiming tag, the popular $4,500. Non-winners of a race in 2013. Racing 6.
Just going back to yesterday, Churchill Downs is what I focused on yesterday. I was pretty happy with the day. 4 for 10 winners on top, but all 4 of those led to cold exactas as well.
Ding, ding,
so,
ding,
yeah,
ding,
you had a
ding, ding.
$26 exacta, a $14 exacta, $40 exacta, which was a play of the day race for me. And then in the last race, the dead heat between my top 2, my A and my B selections dead heated, which took a little of the life out of my win, but still with the 4 winners, wound up with a positive ROI there. But the exactas with my top pick on top, $30 and change. The flip-flop was 28, so if you box those up, you could have wound up with a nice little result as
Only
well.
loses the breakage.
Exactly.
That's
So, like I say,
beautiful.
I was happy with the results yesterday. We'll see what we can do at Finger Lakes this afternoon. Their opener, I have a 2, 1, 5, and 3. The number 2. Blues Powerhouse, to me, it's just one of those horses we get every once in a while that has a buyer edge on this particular bunch. This is one stringing together some buyers up in the 50s, including the high 50s, and I think that's a significant edge on most of these in this field. So Blues Powerhouse, 8-5 on the morning line, I think we'll live up to that. Second spot, the number 1, Smokin' Hero. Second in the last 2 starts, those were both at this level. So I think this horse is right at home at this this calendar condition 45 level. Should be right up in the hunt again today. Has plenty of early speed. I'm sure we'll see that from the rail. And the cutback may also make this one extra dangerous in here. So I may regret putting this one underneath, again, on that cutback from a couple of 2-turn races in the last 2 to 6 furlongs today, particularly with the speed from the rail. But Smokin' Hero, one way or the other, is going to be up in the hunt. And then the number 5, Mom Proof, I think is capable on the best effort. Last time out, a 3rd place finish, although I think the buyer is a little light as compared to the rest of this field. But you go just 2 back, the buyer in a 3rd place finish absolutely fits with this bunch. So again, it's one of those, looking over the last 4 or 5 races, I'm not quite sure exactly what we're going to get number-wise, but if this one jumps up and runs decently, we'll be right up there in the hunt. In the opener today at Finger Lakes, I have a 2, 1, 5, and 3.
Now, here's an example of the second race on the card this afternoon. You talk about the claiming game now and where you really would have an edge if you're so focused on Finger Lakes. Let me just read the conditions for you here. 3-year-olds and up, non-winners of a race. The claimer's in for $5,000. Non-winners of a race in 6 months going 6. Now, if you follow Finger Lakes, you know the $4,500 tag is by far the most popular tag. And this is in for $5,000. It's non-winners of a race in the last 6 months. And then you read the parenthetical part. Races entered for $4,500 or less not considered. And if you didn't follow Finger Lakes, you know, and it's Monday Veterans Day, you want to play, you might not know that. Well, that's unbelievably important because I would say, Seth, off the top of my head, 75% of the races in the claiming tag at Finger Lakes are for the $4,500 price tag. I mean, heck, the horse from the rail has won like 3 out of 4 races, but because of the layers of conditions in these claiming races, you need charts. You need charts.
And most of these are coming out of 4,500s.
Sure,
fact,
well, that's
including my top 2, 8, 1, 2, and then in the last 3 spots, you know, if you're going in for exotics in this race, I get down to that 4th spot, 6, 7, 5. I think you can make a case that all of those are absolutely evenly matched. But in the top 3, 8, 1, and 2, the number 8, Straight Thunder, does come out of a win in a 4,500 calendar condition last time. I think is a cozy fit with this bunch, edge on the best effort. 3 of the last 4 starts were 70-plus buyer figures. I think that's going to be good enough to get it done today. And again, that last effort seems to indicate some good form right now. So Straight Thunder on top. I think that 8-1 looks a little bit generous. I think this one will float down a little bit, but Straight Thunder on top for me. Second spot, the number 1 at 9-2 on the morning line, Our Brave Warrior. Yet another one that's in some pretty good form right now. Blew through a couple of calendar condition 4,500s the last 2. And like the top pick, I think is a good fit with this bunch. And then the number 2, Brave Yank, also gets in the mix with me. Nice win last time off of a late summer layoff. That was at a 45 non-2 calendar condition. Again, I think it's going to be a cozy fit with this bunch. And again, for Veterans Day, I have it 8, 1, and 2. I will say this, though. If you want to jump in for that Veterans Day hunch bet, the 1, Our Brave Warrior, and the number 2, Brave Yank, probably the way to go, boxing those up and seeing what we can get here on Veterans Day if we get a little bit lucky. But I have it 8, 1, 2. As I say, if you get down, you're playing those exotics, I think the 6, 7, 5, that's the order I put them. But I think they're all completely evenly matched on the bottom side of this race. So I have it 8, 1, 2, and then go whichever way you want in that 4th spot.
On to the 3rd race, keeping the theme of, intricate claiming prices in here. 3-year-olds and up in for the popular $4,500, but it's non-winners of 3 races in 2012, 2013, or non-winners of 2 races in 2013 going 6.
3, 4, 7, and 2. The number 3 is Dalgreen Chapel. Just another one of these with a buyer edge versus this particular bunch. Now, has some upper 50 buyers over the last few. Other horses in this race have done better, have gotten 60 buyers if you go down. I'm just looking, this is one of those that the recent buyers give this one a little bit of an edge. So I'll go with Dalgreen Chapel. 8 to 5 on the morning line. I'm master of the obvious in here. And as I say, there are some others that on their best day are going to be able to get past this one. But this one, just on the form cycle currently as compared to these, seems to have maybe a little bit of an edge. Dalgreen Chapel on top. 2nd spot, the number 4, Wise Man Jack. Should rebound to competitive numbers with the cutback to 6 furlongs. Showed some nice speed last time and then faded very, very badly. That was when stretching to 1.40 miles. This horse definitely seems more sprint meant. So as I say, the cutback I think is going to put Wise Man Jack right back in the mix. And then me, the C and GT, number 7 horse. Okay finish last time, but I think this one has to rebound to the prior good numbers. The number last time was a 3rd place finish. The number as compared to these was a little light, but I think probably just looking at the overall past performances going back to late summer, I think we can expect a little bit of a rebound to numbers that are going to fit with this bunch. So in the 3rd, 3, 4, 7, and 2.
On to the 4th race, we have 3-year-olds and up claimers in for $4,500. Non-winners of 2 races in 365 days, racing 1.70 miles.
5, 6, 8, and 1. The number 5 is Wabash River. Wabash River. This is a race that I'm going to be very interested to watch because I have Wabash River on top. I think Wabash River on the numbers is the best horse, but I usually shy away from this type. The trainer is on an 0 for 2013, and I just think until you get over and get one, it's hard to hang your hat on a horse like this. But I think there's enough of an edge here talent-wise that this may be the breakthrough effort. 3 to 1 is probably a little light for an 0 for trainer, but I think on the talent, those odds are correct. So again, it's one of those real head scratchers of a race where I could have gone either way based on the numbers of the horse, solidly on top, based on the numbers of the trainer. I don't like the horse at all, at least in the top spot, but I'm going to slightly go for Wabash River, and as I say, I will be interested to see how this race plays out. On to the next one in the 2nd spot. Number 6 horse has some early speed. Faded in the last 2. So again, like my top pick, I think there's some things you can like about this horse and some things that are detractions. The last 2 starts, having shown speed and faded, scare me away. But there's certainly some back numbers that are going to put this horse right up in the hunt if we can perhaps rebound to those. And then Lemon Peel. This was the horse, I got done handicapping, and as I say, I had some question marks about my top 2. I had Lemon Peel in the 3rd spot, and I really debated moving this one up because I think you have a trainer that can win, you have a jockey that can win, and this horse I think is getting some class relief that can produce a wake-up call, but the last 3 starts have not been anything to write home about. Well beaten, but on the class relief, that may be a wake-up call. So I kept this horse in the 3rd spot because, again, I think like my top 2, there was negatives and positives. It's the same all the way down. There's nothing that I could really get excited about in this race, but I wound up going 5, 6, 8, and 1, and doing so with plenty of trepidation.
Understandable. On to the 5th race. We have 3-year-olds and up. Fillies and Mares claimers in for $4,500. No other stuff. Mile 40 yards.
7, the 1 entry, 9, and 8. The number 7 is Little Nate's Date. And I just think this horse is getting some serious class relief on the move to Suffolk. And again, that's Suffolk down. Like I've talked about Fort Erie over the past couple of weeks. Their meet ended a few weeks ago. And some Fort Erie horses are slowly moving into Finger Lakes. And I'm not quite sure the comparison class-wise. Similar with Suffolk. But I think this horse, price-wise, was racing against some better horses up at Suffolk. I think number-wise, this horse, if you trust those numbers, I think this horse is going to be very interesting on the move to Finger Lakes and the price class drop. So I put Little Nate's Date on top. But again, this will be a horse that will help us get a little bit of a barometer on some of these Suffolk shippers. Avazovsky, the number 1 horse in the second spot for me, as well as number 1A, Sweet Argument. They are both cross-entered in races tomorrow, so I would assume one will go today and one will go tomorrow. But I think both halves of this entry fit pretty well with this particular bunch on the numbers they've thrown recently. I think I'll go with either one or the other in this second spot today. And then in the third spot, we'll go out to the number 9, Forever Jenny. Ran well the last 2 starts at the 4,500 conditional level. So I think plain vanilla 4,500, and given the complexion of the rest of this particular field, I think this horse is going to be a good fit in here today also. I think it's found a home down at this price tag. Now the conditionals probably a little weaker than today. Generally speaking, I think this particular field, Forever Jenny's going to be a decent fit. So in the fifth today, 7, the 1 entry, 9, and 8.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, second half of today's action from Finger Lakes.
I'm Steve Beck.
And I'm Seth Merrill.
Together, we're loose on the lead on Capital OTB, Sundays at 10 a.m. Why should they watch, Seth?
Sit down on Sunday, have a bagel, get some great racing conversation.
Cream cheese only, no jelly. Sundays, 10 a.m., loose on the lead, Capital OTB.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. With a newly designed and engineered internet wagering platform, enhanced video streaming, additional funding options, and 3 new individual wagering opportunities, CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. Combine that with our all-new mobile website. You have 2 of the most powerful, innovative, and advanced wagering platforms available today. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB television network.
Welcome back to the Handicapper Report. Alongside Seth Merrill, I'm Anthony Mormino, up to race number 6 at Finger Lakes this afternoon on the Veterans Holiday. We are going to be 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares for the popular $4,500 claiming tag. Non-winners at 3, going a mile 40.
4, 6, 2, and 1. Wheel Talk, the number 4 horse on top for me. And this goes back to that Suffolk horse I just talked about. This one comes in from Fort Erie, and I have to admit, it's been a couple of weeks now, but there haven't been enough of these for me to get a real good feel on this. But I think this horse is going to have maybe a little bit of a class edge. When horses come from circuit to circuit, this horse on the buyer numbers has a little bit of an edge. But it's particularly at some of these smaller tracks, I'm suspicious sometimes about the buyer figures. I think somebody on their own circuit, it starts to have their own standard by which to judge the buyers. And I think buyer figures theoretically are supposed to bring races at various venues together. You're supposed to be able to look at one number and compare from track to track to track. I'm not sure, as I say, some of these smaller venues, whether you can rely on it that much.
And to interrupt Seth for a moment, that was like when you read the old Andy Byers book, that was really the Mount Everest idea that he clamored for. The idea was a 78 was a 78, and you could take that 78 and plug it in over here. So, because I agree with Seth wholeheartedly, and the funny part to me was that was supposed to be almost the be-all, end-all of it. That was supposed to be the panacea part of a buyer's speed figure, was how it transferred, and everything else, all the subjective stuff,
And
was
for the
immaterial.
most part, I think it's pretty reliable. Some of these small, and I relate it to gymnastics. You go to Olympic gymnastics, a few years ago,
judges.
everybody was getting 10s because I think their standard over the years and years and years started to move. So you started to see too many 10s in gymnastics, and they had to step back and reset the whole thing and get people thinking differently. Well, I think these folks who are at their own little venue and in their own little world for a season, maybe the standard starts to move up a little bit. So again, I'm
And-
not quite sure.
By the way, I believe that because I'm the guy who says I always think the Kentucky Derby number is a lot higher. How can a
Well,
horse never ever reapproach it?
Yeah, I think
Except-
some big races they get a little generous with.
Although I think the Belmont was a 92 this year, which probably was right. Knock him dead in the 70s.
Yeah, so again, these numbers could be real. I'm not sure, but I'm going to rely just enough on them to put Wheel Talk on top. As I say, though, like with the Suffolk horses, get a little more feel as more of these 4 dairy horses run over here at Finger Lakes. Second spot, we'll go to number 6, Proud Parent. This is a one where the numbers, I think, indicate she's going to fit nicely with this particular bunch. Has been racing in the mid-40s the last couple, and as I say, looking at the rest of the field, that's going to be a pretty cozy fit in here. Third spot, the number 2, Encryption Code. Boy, this one tossed in a real dud on the drop last time. Significant class relief from 12.5 to 4,500, and you would have thought this horse would have had a super effort with that class relief. Didn't do it. I think this horse is probably better than that. Maybe the horse is just going, maybe the connections knew this horse is going in the wrong direction. That explains the class drop. I think the horse is probably a little bit better than we saw last time, though. So I'll give Encryption Code one more shot. 6th race today, 4, 6, 2, and 1.
On to the 7th race, 3-year-olds and up. Fillies and mares, claimers in for 4,500, non-winners of 2 races in 365 days, racing the mile.
3, 2, 7, and 1. The number 3 is Lotta TLC. This one just seems in the best form of this particular bunch. Last few races, the buyer figures have been right up there. Took a little bit of a dip maybe last time on a sloppy sealed track, so we'll forgive that. Otherwise, I think the 2 just prior to that put this one right up there in the hunt. Crafty Nettie in the 2nd spot. The buyers are moving in the wrong direction, so I was a little dicey on this horse, but I think this horse might be eligible to bounce back to better numbers with the move to a dry track today, because this is another one that was on sloppy sealed last time, and move to a journeyman jockey I think could provide a little bit of a wake up as well. So again, form-wise on the numbers, Crafty Nettie moving in the wrong direction, but I think there's some reasons to believe that may improve today. 3rd spot, we'll go with number 7, Now Girl. Just could be primed in the 2nd start off the layoff. A long 11-month layoff, came back, ran an okay but well-beaten 3rd in that first start. That may provide a nice foundation to move forward from. 7th race, 3, 2, 7, and 1.
8th race on the card, 3-year-olds and up. Fillies and mares. These are the allowance races we've become very familiar with at Finger Lakes. The capital R at the end. Non-winners of 3 state-bred races other than maiden claiming started going 5.5.
And I have it 3, 6, 7, and 4. The number 3 is Smitten by Gold. Off since July, but the trainer, Michael Ferraro, very good off the layoff, and I think the form this horse had before leaving is good enough to get it done. And again, trainer does okay off the layoff, so that's not a concern for me. Smitten by Gold on top. Number 6, Proud House in the 2nd spot. In some good form, has been in exactas in all 4 of the last races, so this horse I think is going to be right up there and in the hunt again today for a top 2 spot. Sweet Hot Toddy, I think, is going to appreciate the return to Finger Lakes. Had been racing at Finger Lakes earlier this year and had virtually never missed an on-the-board finish. You know, we had a couple that were, I'm just looking at 4th place finish in a little stakes race here in July, but a pretty close up 4th. But again, the move down to Belmont did not prove to be a very good experiment this season. Return to Finger Lakes, bullet workout here. Sweet Hot Toddy should be right up in the hunt, and I think that 12-1 is going to float down because I think folks will recognize this horse will appreciate the return upstate. So in the 8th, 3, 6, 7, and 4.
In the afternoon finale, we have 3-year-olds and up. Fillies and mares. Maiden claimers in for 75, racing 6.
Weak race, and so you're just kind of looking for some things to hang your hat on. I'll go with the 4 on top, 4, 7, 1, and 9. Victoria, just the past couple of races has shown some life, and that's a lot more than plenty of the other ones in here. Knucklehead Nelly in the second spot. Nice third place finish for 12.5 last time. Takes a half step down the claiming ladder. Lightly raced, may still have some upside potential. Likewise, my number one late arrival, first time starter. This is the kind of race where you can roll the dice maybe a little bit and look for a fresh face to perhaps get up and get it done in a field full of horses that have plenty of opportunities to do it and have not done so yet. So in the 9th, 4, 7, 1, and 9.
And that wraps up our look at Finger Lakes this afternoon on this Veterans Day and on Capital Off-Track Betting Television Network. Our schedule will commence this afternoon with Finger Lakes at 12:15, followed by Parks, and then Beulah, Gulfstream Park. And remember, Ron Nicoletti will be joining Seth Mera on Racing Across America in a little bit. Turf Paradise out Phoenix Way, Hollywood Park, Northfield, Mountaineer, Pompano, Yonkers, Australia A and Australia B. And Seth, did you get a chance to see Jim Rome's latest runner yesterday in the Hollywood preview?
Going to show the
down the road.
Show the replay on Racing Across America. So yeah, they purchased the horse off of the maiden victory up at Golden Gate, and Jim Rome, with another good one.
I mean, going 7/8 is an angle I like for juveniles. Is an offspring of Candy Ride. If you remember his Pacific Classic going back to 2003, I'll be surprised. I thought Candy Ride was going to be a big time stallion, but we'll see, because this shared belief yesterday looked, I always tell people, beating lengths is nice, running against the clock is all nice, but I like to see the way the horses do it. And I'll tell you, boy, he changed leads in one step, and when he changed leads, he just exploded. I mean, he beat Kobe's back, who was coming off of the long layoff, so the separation and the, nearly 8-length victory is, but the way he did it was very, very nice. I like the pedigree there and the familiar silk, so that was a pretty nice effort in the Hollywood preview. I don't know if they're planning on bringing him right back.
The articles I read did not make any indication.
It's supposed to. In the old days, it would have been the natural leap. Obviously, this is the last year for these races. 4 other horses have won both the preview and the Hollywood Futurity, but it was a nice look. I mean, it was a nice 7 furlong race, and I've said this before through the years of the history of the Breeders' Cup. When you're not that enamored with the juvenile winner, many people will look in other directions. And I thought Shared Belief over at Hollywood Park yesterday afternoon was a direction that many people could find themselves looking. Also, if you missed any of our selections, you go to CapitalOTB.com. The Handicappers report for you. Also, CapitalOTBBet.com, the state-of-the-art new, brand spanking new wagering platform for you to enjoy this sport with live streaming, race replays, tremendous simplicity for betting this game. We see our customer service if you have any questions. Up next, Seth, you have Racing Across America. Why don't you tell the good folks who you have on this Monday morning?
As you mentioned, Ron Nicoletti, there is racing on this Monday. Typically, they've been racing weekends, so we haven't talked to Ron since they closed their traditional meet last spring. Happy to have him back on board, talk a little bit about this afternoon at Gulfstream, and he'll also tell us a little bit about how their summer season has gone. Jason Wilson from the Jockey Club, they just put out about a week and a half or so ago their latest report on sustainable growth for the racing industry, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
And what's ironic with the calendar on the wall, and what Gulfstream Park I thought became immediately successful a couple of years ago with their early December entry into thoroughbred racing, we're almost there. Yeah. We're almost there for Gulfstream Park 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your afternoon of racing, and remember, take a moment on this Veterans Day and thank a vet. We'll see you next time.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.